Hi, this is Mark Laughlin speaking for the ambidextrous gunfighter. That would be you, hopefully. As if you've seen my previous video series on the KelTec RDB, you know I'm a huge fan of this rifle. For its full ambidextrous operation, perfect mirroring, balance, handling, all that. And so today I'm going to look at something a little bit different. This is the Mossberg MVP Predator. Now, there's not a whole lot of similarities between these two rifles, both in the rifles as they come and as I have them set up. Probably one of the few similarities is they both take AR-15 magazines. This one has this mag release button is right up in the little well there. You just push and pull the mag out, so that works pretty good. So it's a pretty unique setup. Now, let me free myself of the RDB here for a second. You see, this is the RDB with the Burris fast fire mounted really far forward for that quick handling and all that. So let's set that aside and focus a bit on the MVP. Now, one thing to contrast is, of course, field stripping. Of course, with the KelTec RDB, you've got to knock 3 pins out, and then it almost explodes apart into multiple pieces. Now, to field strip the MVP, we have a takedown lever, I guess you would call it, right here to release the bolt. Pull the bolt back, push that little button down, and now we've field stripped it. And literally, this is about as easy as field stripping gets. For malfunction handling, can definitely deal with probably any malfunctions. Very unlikely you're going to run into a double feed with a bolt action rifle. Now, what makes this work with the 5.56, the AR-15 magazines, is this bolt, that little tab there. That's actually what strips the next cartridge off of the top of the magazine and feeds it into the chamber. Now, that looks like it's so fragile. I mean, it's so tiny and just kind of delicate feeling and lightly sprung. But I've never had any troubles with it. If anyone else has had one of these MVP rifles and you've had, say, that break, be sure and post down in the discussion down below. It's worked great for us. Has basically 2 locking lugs, and then your ejector there, and then your extractor right there. Kind of a nice little fluted type bolt. Pretty nice, well made, I think. So let's have some more contrast and comparison with the RDB. So to insert that, you just put it in there and shove it forward, and we're ready to go. Now I've got the magazine out, so we're not chambering around here. Now, one thing, I mean, the KelTec has a terrific trigger, especially for a bullpup. It has a terrific trigger even by AR standards. But this bolt action rifle is freaking crazy awesome. Let's try. Now, of course, there's no reset on these. Let's try that again. I'm guessing 2.5 pounds and very crisp. Excellent, exceptional trigger. It does have the little kind of the little trigger safety there. So to help prevent accidental discharges, if you drop the rifle. Now, basically what that just did, even though it maybe sounded like it fired, it basically, I think it released the pressure on the hammer spring or something. So to fire, you have to pull that little tab and then bang. You hear the difference in the break there. That was, poing. And if I do it if I pull the trigger back without hitting that safety, it's just kind of a little click, okay? All right, so Now, see, this is a 20-inch barrel, which coincidentally is the same length barrel as the RDB. Now we can see the RDB is quite a bit shorter in overall length. Looks like about, I'll edit this, annotate it, but it looks like about 10 inches shorter. So as far as shooting from behind cover, you know, the disadvantage of this rifle is that you're going to have to be further back from cover than you will with the RDB. And of course the whole Ambi thing is just not quite there. I mean, bolt action, there's really no way to make it perfectly mirrored for ambidextrous operation. Now, of course, I can operate it differently, but left and right. But it's not perfectly mirrored. So if you really get in the zone, like you might on a semi-automatic rifle, you don't really know whether you're shooting right or left. It's just instinctive. So it needs to be perfectly mirrored. Well, the philosophy used for this rifle is going to be, you know, it's basically a hunting rifle, coyote rifle. You know, in some areas with the 5.56, you can hunt big game like antelope and deer. Some places you can't with a 5.56. You'd have to go with a 308 or 6.5 or 7.62 version of this. Now, you know, 20-inch barrel. One difference is that with the bullpup, it does come with a flash hider, and which protects the muzzle. This is not threaded. I think you can get a threaded version of this, but it has a recessed crown to help protect the rifling lands. And so this is a very accurate rifle for shooting, you know, for high accuracy at longer ranges. This is going to be a bit better than the RDB, no doubt. And it depends on what your intended use is, whether this is better than the RDB or not. Yeah, really, we're comparing, you know, definitely this is big time apples to oranges. So I'm just basically using the RDB to kind of contrast what this rifle is about. Now I think this is kind of cool how it uses the AR mags. It kind of gives it almost like a M14 look, just that it's a bolt action M14. Now the other thing, of course, is different is we're, of course, could run this differently, but we are running a Vortex Viper 1x8 optic on this. That really actually came off of an AR-15. Now, one advantage that the RDB has, it has that long Picatinny rail that runs basically almost from where your nose meets the back of it up to the forward end of the rifle. This rifle, the MVP Predator, has a fairly short rail. And to get this optic to mount on it, we had to mount both rings behind the turrets to get the optic far enough forward for proper eye relief. You know, actually right there is where I need to be for good proper turkey neck cheek weld, and even there the optic is too far back. Now, I've got a little bit. We'll probably end up loosening this up and moving this optic forward that quarter of an inch that we have available to us. Now there is other models of the MVP that I think have the longer rail, and they have like a scout version that gets a rail further out here where you can actually use a long eye relief scope, and I think that would be the ideal way to go. I'm just not sure that that's available with the 20-inch barrel, and I think I'd rather have the 20-inch barrel for what this rifle is all about. You know, scout rifle setup is pretty cool, but for scout rifle, you know, Jeff Cooper, I mean, it was a great idea, but I think a scout rifle should be semi-auto myself. Bolt action, I don't like it because it's not perfectly ambidextrous. If I wanted to use a manual action rifle for Ambi use, and I would probably go with a lever action, like my Marlin guide gun in 4570, or else maybe a Henry Long Ranger in 308. So anyway, this is actually a very cool rifle, quite affordable for the incredible accuracy that it delivers. This is a laminate stock, has the nice rubber butt pad. I mean, with this rifle is there's 5.56 are essentially no recoil to speak of. Now, one thing we talked about on the RDB, one of my videos where we compared an AR-15 with a 16-inch barrel with a flash hider versus the RDB with its 20-inch barrel without a flash hider. What it seemed to in our testing was that the 20-inch barrel provided flash hiding capability that was the equal of the 16-inch barrel with the flash hider. So if that's the case, then I probably would prefer to have the extra barrel length, 4 inches of extra barrel length versus the 16-inch barrel with a 2-inch flash hider on, so that's 18 inches. I'd rather have the 20-inch barrel and have that added velocity and maybe a little bit more accuracy, or at least a flatter shooting rifle because of the added velocity. Now, anyway, it's pretty simple. This rifle has got some great, terrific, knurling. I mean, the stock is pretty. It's pretty, and I'll also notice that it's actually very much free-floated. There's no contact with the stock here. In fact, the rifle comes with a nice little spacer here that you can stick down in there to kind of, when in storage, I guess, to kind of help keep things out of contact there, so that maybe the stock, I guess, so the stock won't warp or something and start coming in contact with the barrel. But that's, just one of the things that helps it get that incredible accuracy. And then we can see here, check out the mag well. Pretty simple setup, just basically a bolt action rifle with an AR-15 magazine. Good idea, Mossberg. And they've got a whole series of rifles now. I bought this rifle, it must have been back when the MVP first came out from Mossberg. Must have been, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And man, it's really accurate. Just that as I got more and more into the Ambi thing, just really kind of just moved away from bolt actions, and it kind of since then has kind of set in the gun safe without seeing a whole lot of use. But for coyote hunting, terrific little package. And well worth checking out their whole series of MVP rifles. They got the scout versions, they got the tactical sniper-like versions. I mean, it's a whole range of them now, and a lot more calibers than when this one came out. I think the 5.56 was the only thing they offered, and now I think they have it in 6.5 Creedmoor and 7.62 NATO as well. I think that's it. But anyway, well worth checking out. Just great little affordable, very accurate package. So now let's take this out to the range and do a little shooting and compare these two rifles side by side. So before we head out to the range, let's look at how the safety operates on the Mossberg MVP. Now it is a little kind of like a throw lever right here for a right-handed shooter, basically, and then push forward to fire and pull it back to put on safe. And for left-handed, you could actually operate it. It is just on the other side of the bolt. So that is actually more ambidextrous friendly than like a crossbolt safety. Now, crossbolt safety I don't like for ambidextrous use because it's even though it's accessible for both left and right-handed, if you're not, when you become kind of unconscious of whether you're shooting left or right-handed, and it's just automated, it works differently. Putting the rifle on safe on one side is different than putting it on safe on the other side. One side you push the button in, the other side you have to make the button pop out. So as far as talking about the crossbolt safety, here is an example of what I'm talking about here on the Marlin guide gun. And it uses a crossbolt safety just kind of right in front of the hammer here. And so if I am shooting right-handed and I want to take it off safe, I use my thumb to push the button in. Now if I'm shooting left-handed and I want to take it off safe, I have to reach across the other side with my thumb and push it back out on this side. Now whereas right-handed, if I'm shooting right-handed, I would use probably my trigger finger to push it off safe. And so left-handed, if I'm mirroring, it's going to want to be instinctive for me to use my trigger finger to push in there, and that's actually making the rifle safe. So if I do a lot of shooting left-handed, and I got used to like pushing that off, pushing that in to make the rifle safe, then if I'm switching over to right-handed, I'm not really thinking, you know, I'm shooting left-handed or right-handed, I just automatically come up and push the button in to make it safe. Well, now I've not made it safe, I've actually put it into the fire position. So that's why I don't like crossbolt safeties. Even though, like I say, the button is accessible on both sides, it operates differently left or right-handed. And if you're really getting to where you're shooting right-handed or left-handed without thinking I'm shooting right-handed or left-handed, it's just automated. Perfect mirroring, the whole bilateral transfer thing that goes on in your brain, where your brain transfers a skill set from right-handed to left-handed or vice versa. It's gonna make it so that it's mirroring the functions of right and left-handed perfectly. So your rifle needs to be mirrored perfectly as well. So in that regard, I think the Mossberg safety is, you know, from the ambidextrous gunfighter perspective, is better, because at least it's just simply forward is fire, rear is safe. Now, even though you may operate it with your thumb on this side, and you're bringing your thumb over on this side, it at least is always forward for fire, rear for safe. Now, one thing I always do when shooting, and we'll get into this when we get to the range, is for a rifle like this, I typically want to bring my thumb over to the side. And that's what's typically with a straight stock rifle. Even though it does have a little bit of a pistol grip, I like to bring the thumb over, and that gets my finger where I can get the exaggerated C-shaped trigger finger and pull straight back. And a lot of times I even use my fingers to use this pistol grip to pull the rifle smartly into my shoulder, and use that exaggerated C-shaped trigger finger so that I'm not dragging wood, meaning when I pull the trigger, my finger is not sliding alongside the stock and pulling the rifle ever so slightly off target. Now, when we talk about working the actions left or right-handed, there's of course a Marlin guide gun where no matter whether I'm left or right-handed, the action operates the same. No matter whether I'm left or right-handed, I can manipulate the hammer left or right-handed the same. It's just that crossbolt safety is different. And then you do have the advantage on the lever gun with a loading port where you can top off your tubular magazine. And so I like the Hornady lever evolution, because you get kind of that Spitzer bullet effect, but yet you can put them in the tubular magazine because they have an elastomer tip on them, so they won't discharge under recoil. Of course, between these two rifles, the comparison, at least they're getting a little more like apples to apples. They're both manual actions. The overall length of the guide gun's a little bit shorter, but it is I believe it's maybe an 18.5 inch barrel. And in this case, we're running optics on both, although this is on the guide gun, it's a 1x3 optic is what we're running, and it's really low on the pick rail. And again, we had to use the rings behind the turret to get the scope far enough forward for a proper turkey neck cheek weld. And then even then, we had to use a little cheek riser to get the height, your cheek weld up to where your eyes are aligned properly behind the optic. Now, the Marlin guide gun, the stock is made to where at about this height optic, at least for me, it puts me pretty much perfectly aligned behind the scope. And so anyway, that's kind of a comparison between something a little more similar to manual actions with sort of similar optics. Weights between these two are about the same, because this Vortex optic is pretty heavy. I think it must be 22, 24 ounces or something once you factor in the mounts. So that adds quite a bit of weight to this rifle. I would prefer a much lighter optic because the rifle without the optic is really super light. And anyway, let's head out to the range. Okay, so for here our conclusion, I guess you'd say, of our apples to oranges range test here with the KelTec RDB versus the Mossberg MVP. And actually I shot the RDB better in general. I think largely because it's really windy today, and I'm also very familiar with the KelTec. Now the MVP is actually, my son has set it up for his use. Now the MVP, my son has actually got this set up for his use, and I think that for me the scope is too far back and also a little bit too high, so I wasn't able to get a really good steady cheek weld on it, and also the focus is doesn't match my eyes at all. So and I couldn't find the focus adjustment, and I probably shouldn't screw with it since it's for my son's setup. But still, definitely the trigger on this thing is crazy awesome. But so is the RDB. It has an astonishingly good trigger. In fact, it's so good that I would almost say, hey, it's almost a wash, maybe the MVP by a little bit. Now, of course, the RDB also has a big advantage because it's an auto-loading rifle. So once I got my natural point of aim, all I had to do is just wait for it to come out of recoil, and it's right back on the exact same spot on target, and then just squeeze the trigger, and I'm good again, and it's reloading for me. Whereas the bolt gun, of course, it's basically every time I operate the bolt, I'm wrecking my natural point of aim. So I have to come back in, find my natural point of aim again, and maybe I kind of pushed a little bit, mainly because it was so windy, and I could see that the muzzle was getting blown around quite a bit. Shorter muzzle, shorter overall length on the RDB made it just easier to shoot in these conditions. Both of them shot all the ammo we brought. We brought the 55 grain, 62 grain, and 75 grain, I believe it is. And there was a 75 grains of hollow point bow tail. They all shot it. The RDB shoots them a little, each bullet size a little bit differently, whereas the MVP, there was really not any substantial difference in point of impact compared to point of aim, whereas RDB, the different bullet weights affected the point of impact. One key advantage that the RDB had today, because it's really windy, is with that shorter overall length and basically no weight out on the muzzle, I wasn't fighting keeping the resisting the wind just with the muzzle, and whereas the MVP, it was getting blown around quite a bit with that that really long barrel sticking out there is catching some wind. It's blowing about 30 something today, so it's pretty stout wind. Protected right here, but down there at the firing line, it's coming across at a pretty a full value wind, so it was pretty challenging. And like I said before, we're running this Burris Fastfire 2 on here, a red dot, which is like a 3-minute of angle, maybe more, maybe a 4-minute of angle red dot. So it's pretty much covering up my target, at least the square part of the target. Whereas with this Vortex Viper, 8 power, an LPV scope, that's from 1 to 8 power, had it on 8 power, and it's you know, I could actually pick out the little cross hatch lines on the target with this. Not that it helped, just, I could also see the muzzle moving around a lot with the wind. So terrific rifle. Definitely want to try one of these in a 7.62. That'd be really cool. I got a lot of 7.62 ammo stashed away, so a bolt gun and 7.62 would be pretty sweet. And maybe we could at some point test it, you know, do another apples to oranges comparison and compare it to the KelTec RFB in 7.62 and have another Mossberg MVP versus KelTec bolt-up shootout. But anyway, for a bolt gun, really like the MVP. It's just not something I'm going to practice with because my whole emphasis is on being ambidextrous, and just the bolt gun throws that thing all out of whack. But a great coyote gun, you know, for an urban sniper, this would be a freaking crazy awesome setup, especially if you get, you know, if your hide was in an area where you were out of the wind. So I think the advantage would definitely go to this. I remember we used to shoot this off of a bench or off of packs, and we were getting, you know, really super tight groups for us at the time. Today, just with the wind, it just couldn't really take advantage of its accuracy. But it's Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextrous Gunfighter. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. So the trigger on both these rifles, the KelTec RDB and the Mossberg MVP, are both excellent. Mossberg, a bolt action rifle, the trigger's maybe a little bit better, but the RDB is amazingly good trigger. Now it's kind of unfair to do a comparison with a bolt gun with an 8 power optic versus a bullpup with a old school red dot Burris Fastfire 2, but I'd say the RDB kind of holds its own. Had a couple of called flyers, and I'm thinking that's probably these here. I was shooting for there, but there's my group there. And then on the Mossberg MVP, nice little constellation there. And these are with different loads. So actually, for example, on this one, this is the that was a 65 grain load, and that was the 60 or 72 grain, 65, and 55 grain.